Welcome back to The Great Compromise. I'm GOP Jim, and of course, I'm joined by Victoria the Democrat. Hi, Victoria.
Hi.
Today, we are talking about war in Ukraine, specifically the U.S.'s involvement with the war in Ukraine.
Yes, we are.
A couple things before we start. Today's going to be a debate. Victoria's going to start on the pro side, go over her arguments, and then I'm going to be on the con side and go over my arguments, and then afterwards we're going to discuss. We may say the Ukraine at some points. It's not because we mean to offend Ukrainian people, but because it rolls off the tongue so nicely and how so many people say it. But we know you're not supposed to call it the Ukraine. It's just Ukraine. For those who don't know, the Russians called it the Ukraine during the Soviet times. And so now that it is a sovereign country, they prefer to drop the, which makes sense. So, all that being said, Victoria, why don't you kick us off?
I am pro-US involvement in Ukraine. I think that once you understand what's going on in Ukraine and how hard the people are fighting for their maintained independence, it's too difficult to empathize with them and really encourage the U.S. to back off. It's true that we are one of the main funders contributing to not just military support, but also humanitarian efforts. And not a lot of the financial packages that other people donate include humanitarian aid, whereas many of our donations, not all of them by far, but many of them include and specify humanitarian aid. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly important, especially when you hear about how starting in November, well, as recently as November, Russia was beginning to attack energy infrastructure in Ukraine, meaning that they're cutting off power supplies and therefore heat, water, and everything to people still living in Ukraine, so that as winter rolls in and temperatures get colder, they won't be able to survive and continue to stay there. And that's just, it sounds really scary to, being in like Eastern Europe, not being able to weather the winter. So I know that this is a very expensive war, but just abandoning such an important effort, I don't feel like is really moral at this point. We've been in it so far. So I think just humanitarian effort and helping the people of Ukraine is my first point. My second point in my pro argument is that we cannot let Russia have their foothold in this land. It's such an awful thing that they're doing, and I don't believe in letting Russia get away with it. I don't believe in letting any of Russia's supporters get away with it. And I think calling out like Iran with these sanctions is important, but like sanctions aren't really going to do enough. Like fighting through Ukraine and like putting Russia in their place as much as like we have a shot to is important, especially when you think about how like China is of course watching everything that's happening right now, seeing if they can get away with doing something similar in the future. And so I wouldn't feel safe backing down and letting Russia just do whatever they want from here on out. That's not going to be safe for the rest of the world. And it's certainly not going to be safe for the future of people in Ukraine.
Thank you, V. So I am against heavy U.S. involvement with the war in Ukraine. I have no problem with countries defending themselves. I fully support what Ukraine is doing and fully condemn Russia's clear acts of war. My problem is how much the U.S. is involved. We are effectively fighting a proxy war with Russia. How did we get here? Why are we always so involved? And where are Ukraine's other allies? Somehow, no matter what the conflict is, the U.S. has to be involved. And not just involved, but fully invested. From January to October of 2022, the U.S. government has sent an estimated $54.43 billion to Ukraine. Billion. This figure is not even up to date. It is certainly higher by now. And most of that number is in military aid, roughly $29 billion. The smallest amount is for humanitarian aid, which is at $9.95 billion. Although that's not a small amount, it is far smaller than the military aid. And the other $16 billion is for financial aid. Now, this is a huge amount of money. And as expected, our allies are not spending their fair share. According to the Kiel Institute, a German organization that has been tracking the money given to Ukraine, the US is now committing nearly twice as much money as all EU countries and institutions combined. Twice as much. For example, the UK has spent close to $7 billion in total, and Germany has spent, almost $3.5 billion. This is just sad. What are the other world powers even doing? Why is it only the United States who ever has to shell out money when these things come up? NATO, the EU, and the UN have time and time again proven themselves to be completely worthless. They all talk big, but when an actual problem comes up, they run and hide behind the US's skirt. It's just sad. At least Poland is accepting the most Ukrainian refugees by far compared to any other country. That is a huge help. But by and large, the United States is expected to do it all on their own yet again. And this is an unacceptable norm.
Okay, those are fair points, but what do you want us to do about it, Jim? Because Ukraine is running a budget deficit of $5 billion a month. 15.7 million people in Ukraine were in urgent need of assistance as of April. The money received so far has been burned through, according to the country's former Minister of Finance. Where is this help going to come from if it doesn't come from us? And they definitely need help.
They need humanitarian help, certainly. I am happy for the U.S. to provide humanitarian aid. Just to be clear, I'm not against that. My problem is when we're the only country providing aid. It's not even close to any other country helping on a financial level that we are. It's not even close. Where are Ukraine's allies? Where are our allies? What happened to NATO? What happened to the EU? They have money, they just aren't giving Ukraine any. Why does it always fall on us to do everything? That's my problem.
I think that's a fair concern. That's a good point. I have no answer for you. I don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know why their contribution is small in comparison. Mm-hmm. But that's not in our power to change.
Well, it might be.
Keep talking.
If the U.S. dropped all their funding for Ukraine tomorrow.
Gambling with people's lives?
That's
the plan?
This is a hypothetical, right? It's not going to happen. We wouldn't let it happen. In this hypothetical scenario, the U.S. drops every penny. It doesn't give Ukraine any more money. Don't you think our allies or Ukraine's allies would probably pick up that check?
I really don't know.
I don't know either, but I would hope that they would. If they actually care, they would do that. They have the money. We're not the only wealthy country in the world. Why does it always fall on us? You can't claim to be allies. You can't claim to have NATO, this European Union, and then not help its members. I mean, Ukraine's not a part of NATO yet, but they want to be a part of NATO, and NATO is not showing them a reason why they should join them. Why would they? They're getting nothing for it.
Well, this seems to me like it started a really long time ago, that the U.S. swooped in and fixed things, and all the other countries felt like they could take a back seat. Yes. And so we've had a bad precedent, and all the countries are just following the precedent that we set.
It's probably been like this since, World War II.
That's when I was thinking.
We are the superpower, but that doesn't mean We
Well,
should
I
continue.
don't have superpower money, so...
Well, you don't. The country does, apparently.
Are you sure?
No, we really don't, but we love giving it away. Everyone hates when America is the world's police. Everyone hates it, apparently. But when it comes time to accept a check, everybody loves it and are expecting us to give it.
Right.
What part of this is fair? Why does it always fall on us? It shouldn't. That is my point. I'm not saying the Ukraine doesn't have a right to defend itself. They certainly do. I'm not saying we shouldn't help with humanitarian efforts. We certainly should. But should we be giving them, $30 billion in military aid? No. No, I don't think we should.
So that what? Russia can win this war? Then what happens?
Well, as bad as that would be, it doesn't really involve us.
It would.
It doesn't really, though.
It would, though, don't you think? The next steps, the domino effect would be that then we would just be dragged in, but we wouldn't be, behind the curtain anymore.
Last time they said that, we got in war in Vietnam. And how did that work out?
No one likes to talk about Vietnam.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There was no point to that war. We shouldn't get involved in this other than humanitarian aid. That is my point.
So if Russia wins, and then we have to fight Russia on some other turf as they continue to grow, then what's the price tag of the next war? Might this be ending some bigger future battle now? Is this the cheaper alternative, possibly?
You think this is going to lead to us getting into a war with Russia?
Isn't that what people are worried about? That this could turn into World War III? What's the price tag on that?
Okay. Let me counter that point by making this point. Aren't we already effectively in a war with Russia if we're just supplying Ukraine with all of their weapons? That is what we're doing right now.
We're not supplying our men and women.
We're not supplying...
We would be if we were actually in a war with Russia.
We have zero boots on the ground, but we have a lot of our weapons in their hands. What's the difference?
American death.
Okay. That's true.
That's a big factor.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it'll get to that, frankly. That's a European...
should hope not.
That's a European Union problem, and it's time for them...
we're so good at staying out.
It's time for them to step up and do something. It is. It's long past time for us to stop being the world's police. The EU needs to do something. This is on their turf. It's their time to shine. They're not doing it. They're letting us do it again. And I'm over it. I'm done. We should not be giving any more military funding to Ukraine. We should not be giving them weapons. No more of that. Just humanitarian aid from now on.
Okay, I know how you feel, but what do you think the likelihood is that we actually stay out if this turns into a bigger thing?
Oh, 0%.
Okay, so then we need to stay involved.
Well, I'd put more sanctions on Russia.
Yes.
That's what I would do. And then I would cut the funding to Ukraine. It seems like Russia doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's hurting them. They can't keep this up forever. These sanctions really are hurting them, truly.
We're nearing in on a year of this.
Mm-hmm.
Is Russia really slowing down?
Well, they haven't been that good from the beginning, to be honest. If they were any better, they would have taken Ukraine by now. I mean, Ukraine is tiny. Russia supposedly is much bigger and stronger, and they haven't done it yet. So I wouldn't say they're winning. Ukraine
is impressively strong and has really held their own more than I think anyone expected.
Yes. And a part of that is because we give them lots and lots of weapons and lots of money.
I think it's really more about their grit.
Their true grit.
And their character.
The resilience. The human spirit.
They have a lot to fight for.
They do have a lot to fight for. And they have our weapons to do it.
Well, it's their lives they're losing.
Yeah, no, listen, I support the Ukrainian cause. I do. But we should be supporting it through humanitarian means, not through military means. In fact, I may even have the solution.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, he's got his hands up. He's painting a billboard with his fingertips. What do you got for me?
I'm painting a picture for you, a visual image.
It's a billboard. Go on.
Of the solution.
Yes.
What we should do. I wrote that in my notes. What we should do.
The lights are blinking. Please continue.
Okay. What we should do is...
Uh-huh.
The United States should pledge to match the EU's spending in humanitarian aid, and then we cut the rest of our spending for Ukraine.
I like the matching.
I like
the matching.
So, if that agreement to match doesn't incentivize Ukraine's supposed allies into actually helping, I don't know what will. We pledge to match, we cut the military spending, and this is how we do it moving forward. What do you think?
I think that now I have that song. This is how we do it. Stuck in my head.
Okay.
But I think that's in your favor. Yeah.
Oh, the song helps.
Yeah, no, I like the matching. I don't know about only humanitarian matching, but I like the matching in general because I agree that we shouldn't be the big man on campus financially.
Yes. Well, we always are.
It's not fair and it doesn't actually make sense. We're not even on that continent, but...
Thank you so much.
That doesn't mean that I'm willing to let Ukraine drown out of stubbornness. I feel like somebody needs to step in, and if we're the only country that would be willing to do it, then so be it.
The only stubbornness are all of the other allies who aren't doing anything to help. That's the stubbornness here. We have done our part. Plenty. We cannot afford to keep the spending up. We are, I don't know if you noticed, we're not having such a good time at home here. We need this money to fund a lot of things.
Listen, I've noticed.
You've noticed. It's bad, okay? We need the money. I'm sorry. We can help them with humanitarian efforts. We can take in refugees. We can do what is morally right. But we gotta cut that military spending.
I will compromise with you on the matching.
The matching for all of it or humanitarian aid?
Just for the matching.
Just
of all of
the
it.
Concept of matching.
All of it, though, I think.
Okay, well, that's a start. That is our great compromise.
Yeah, that's our great compromise.
This time. Thank you all for listening to this episode of The Great Compromise. If you liked it, share it with your friends. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and we will see you next week.